Hello and welcome to this week's Hobbytime at Healys video. Thank you very much for tuning in. As the title suggests, this week we're talking about the top 5 Xenos character models from Games Workshop's range that I feel need an update. So, grab yourself a lovely cuppa and let's dive on it. So, let's set some ground rules for this list. The models and miniatures in question have to come from Games Workshop's web store under the Xenos Army section with the character keyword ticked. Does mean I won't be talking about any old characters that don't have models anymore, such as Vect or the Bone Singers that used to get and were re-released as a limited edition model. It also means that when we talk about only available on the Games Workshop's web store, I'm not going to be talking about any Forge World models. So, with those ground rules all laid out, let's kickstart this off with miniature number 5. So, when we start off with number 5, it's going to be, for me, it's the Tau Ethereal with Honor Blade. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad model or a bad sculpt. I just think it's very dated compared to a lot of the other miniatures that are available now. Now, there was a few of the ethereal models I looked at and thought this could do with an update, or maybe this is okay. This was the one for me that screamed out, for the love of God, update me. And what it was actually on the miniature itself was the Honor Blade. I just don't think the actual sword or the blade itself is up to the standard or up to the grandeur that an Honor Blade would be. We know that the Tau aren't much for combat, however, it's an Honor Blade, it needs to be more adorned, and it just generally I just think the model itself is a little bit lackluster compared to what we're seeing now. Again, this isn't necessarily a bad model, it's not to the standards we're now seeing. There were a few others within the Tau range that I did consider, but this one for me was the one that I thought definitely needed an update. So that again, yes, the Tau Ethereal model with Honor Blade. And for number 4, this might seem a little bit of an unusual choice considering how much love they've just got, but I have some Necron models. But more importantly, it's ones that didn't get an update or haven't got one as yet. And that is the 2 Setan shards. So that's first off the Deceiver and the Nightbringer. Now, both of these models still come in fine cast or resin, as it's now called on GW's web store. I just think, after seeing the stunning Void Dragon that was previewed, these guys are just nowhere near where they should be. I always thought the models themselves actually were done very well. The Nightbringer, for me, really represents exactly how it looked in the old Dawn of War Dark Crusade game, with a massive scythe and basically just a bringer of death who looks almost like a giant Grim Reaper. So I always liked the sculpt, and the same with the Deceiver. I've seen some wonderful things done with this, painted up in various ways, converted into some Harlequin models. Like, both of these miniatures themselves, when they were released, were really, really nice. However, they just haven't had an update. And when you now put it on the field next to the Void Dragon, they're just not going to look the same. I would love to see these shards just get a big update as well. I'm not saying let's make them the massive model similar to the Void Dragon, but something that would just makes it look a little bit more grandiose. I think the poses themselves really honour some of the artwork from the older codexes. But yeah, just an update for these would just look really, really lovely for me. So the 2 Setan shards are my choice for number 4 for Xenos character models that need an update. And on to number 3. Number 3, we're going to look at a few Tyranid models. And now I had a really tough choice choosing between these two. First off was Death Leaper, and I remember having these lictors. They're actually metal lictors were the ones I had when I ran the Tyranids, and they fell apart. No matter how much glue you put on them or how you used green stuff or anything, I couldn't get these guys, the arms, to stay on. So with Death Leaper, it's very similar. It is in the fine cast, but again, I just think with how tall the model itself is, it definitely needs an update because the arms or talons or mandibles on it are basically just going to end up snapping off. And in my experience, nobody's had much luck with this. But as I said, there was 2 models I was choosing between, and the other one was the Red Terror. And you can tell just by looking at it that this is old. Again, at the time, this is a really cool looking model, but it just needs a good push. Now, I mean, with the Red Terror, it's just not scary. It's almost that comical style alien that we'd see from some old school 80s movies. Especially when you put it even against Death Leaper. Death Leaper looks quite terrifying, and some of the really beautiful Tyranid models we're seeing coming out of the range now. So it was a toss-up to choose between these, but I settled on the Red Terror, and the Red Terror for me is definitely the one that needs an update more than the other character models within the Tyranid range. Now, no Xenos list for me would be complete without talking about some of the Orc models. The Orcs have had some really interesting stuff come out recently with the Speed Freaks and the preview where we think they may be getting some new Orc boys. But the one thing that I found that they're really lacking is in that character slot. Ghazghkull looks amazing, so I would love them to pay the same treatment to the Weird Boy. So the Weird Boy definitely needs a good boost because, I mean, look at it. It's still a resin kit, and you can tell it's still using the old metal mold just with the resin put into it, and it looks, for me, it looks very cluttered. I know that sounds a bit weird talking about Orc models because they are all about being slapped together and scrap and stuff, but I kind of took me a minute to kind of take in what was going on with this. For me, it's just a little bit there's too much kind of going on. And it's a Weird Boy is something that we definitely need a better version of. To put in the Orc players lists, I just think the Weird Boy is meh. Like, I've seen some fantastic good conversions from when we look over at the Iron Jaws from Destruction from Age of Sigmar. We see some really nice ones, and a lot of people do tend to take some of those characters and just slap a few guns on it, 40k it up, and run that as a Weird Boy. So that kind of gives a good idea of what sort of stuff people are looking for. But for me, this just isn't up to the standard. But this isn't my choice. When we actually come to the Orc models, it is going to be the Orc War Boss with Big Chopper. This guy is still metal, and it's one of the only really War Boss choices you can get. There isn't a plastic War Boss. I mean, we saw that really nice one that came in the Assault on Black Reach set. And of course you can get the one from the Grux Boys kit as well. I just think actually, where's the standard HQ choice? Where's the War Boss? Where's the blister or the small box that we see now that a lot of the Marine characters are coming in? It has a lot of options of War Boss, and we really that really needs to be represented. Again, I feel for Orc players because you really shouldn't be relying on the stuff from Destruction in Age of Sigmar to make your armies, and although some of the conversions are beautiful and fantastic, you should be able to buy a 40k War Boss that isn't metal, that doesn't come with a squad with it, or just generally just actually has all the weapon options inside. So yeah, for me, the War Boss from the Orcs definitely needs a good overhaul, and a multi-part plastic kit released for it. And now, before we get to the top of the list, we do have a few bonus shoutouts. Now, this is going to be a little bit strange because there's actually two kits I want to highlight here. One is the Autarch from Eldar, and the other is the Cadra Fireblade from Tau. Now, both of these kits are plastic. They're not overly old, but personally, I just don't think they are to the standard that I would expect. So starting with the Cadra Fireblade, my choice for this was because although it's a fixed model, it doesn't really have any other options it can take. I just think I'm not a big fan of the pose, and that's all down to personal preference. It, for me, harkens back to those old times where we used to see the models that were very sort of not dynamic and almost very flat, where they kind of stood a bit like this. And that's kind of it. Again, it's not a bad model, it's all down to personal taste. Personally, when it comes to my Cadra Fireblades, I'll be looking at converting one up, and I know a lot of other people have done the same. The thing with the Fireblade is he almost does blend in with the rest of the Tau army, and I would like to see a helmeted option available in the kit, not just the bare face, and maybe a little bit more of dynamic posing with the pulse rifle. Just something there, For me personally, I would love to see it get an update. We kind of go the other way with the Autarch, because the Autarch kit itself is really nice and dynamic. The Swooping Hawk wings look really good on it. But that's kind of it. It doesn't have any of the other options that are available. Now, most people tend to take their Autarchs on the Skyrunner, which again is another kit that I think does need an update. But the Autarch itself has lots of options it can take, which aren't really available in the kit. It comes with the Swooping Hawk wings, the Mandy blasters, the fusion pistol, and the sword. That's it. But it does have other options on its datasheet, and there are other variants. So I just think, again, this is another example of kind of almost rushing out a new dynamic kit, where you put out a really good looking model, but it just needs almost, I get it's all on one piece of sprue, but if it had a secondary sprue with all the other weapon options and was, a few quid more, I don't think many people would be that unhappy about it, because you'd actually be able to buy it and you'd have some spare bits to do some cool conversions with. Yeah, I just think there's a lot more that could be done with these, so that's kind of my shout outs to these. These are two kits that aren't necessarily old, but I really think do need an update. And finally, we round off the list with, I think it's pretty obvious what's coming here, and that is any of the Eldar Phoenix Lords. So these are old models. So first up, we've got Azamin right here. Again, a nice sculpt at the time, just needs an update, still a fine cast resin kit. Then we move on to Karandraz. Now this is the leader of the Striking Scorpions, and the Striking Scorpions themselves also need an update. But yeah, the leader itself, the Phoenix Lord of them, definitely needs a good boost. Again, this is another Finecast resin kit that you can get. We then go on to Magan Ra. Now Magan Ra actually was one of the ones I almost didn't put on this because he's a really nice sculpt. I think he's just very sort of stoic when he stands there with the weapon, but I would like to see him just taken to that next level. The stuff that we are seeing of Jane Zar, you know, she's been updated. I would love to see what they do with Magan Ra's model. But again, another resin Finecast kit. Then we have Baroth, and the fact that the Autarch looks more dynamic and better than the Phoenix Lord kind of tells you all we need to say about this. And it's metal. It's not even Finecast or resin. It's still using the old metal version of it. Maybe it's not very popular because, you know, the Swooping Hawks don't see much use, but that shouldn't mean that it doesn't get a little bit of love and attention, so I'm hoping they do something with it. And finally, of course, Fugan. Fugan doesn't even say on the web store. If you have a look, and honestly go check it out, it just says this kit comes with one model. So I'm going to presume it's metal and it's one solid piece. I've only really seen metal versions of it, so I don't know if they ever did a Finecast variant. And that kind of tells you what we need to know. You know, I mean, the Fire Dragons themselves do need a good boost and an overhaul. I mean, I could sit here for ages and talk about all the different Eldar models that need an overhaul. But when we talk about, obviously, just the characters, for me, any of these Phoenix Lords from the list, after seeing what's happened to Jane Zar, please pay that same love and attention and respect to these other Phoenix Lords. It will just go a long way to help a lot of Eldar players. So let me know what you think. Do you agree with my list? Do you think the ordering was wrong? Is there anything I've missed as a massive oversight when you're screaming at it going, why is this not on the list? Please whack it in the comments. And if you've liked what you've seen today, please hit that subscribe and notification bell, as that really, really helps me out. And also check out in my link tree below, as we have the Hobbytime at Healys Discord, the Hobbytime at Healys Twitch channel, as well as I'm available on Twitter and Instagram. So please, if you're liking what you've seen so far, check those out. And don't forget to join us every Thursday and Sunday for our hobby hangouts on Twitch, where we go live as myself and a few friends and we chat all things hobby related, and also showcase off some fantastic miniatures from people within the community. Other than that, the last thing left to say is, as always, stay safe, stay positive, and remember, be an ambassador for your hobby. Thank you very much. Goodbye.